Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football.
Hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk some prospects. We're up to the middle linebacker position group, inside linebacker in a 3-4. So we got lots to talk about today, including some stuff in the NFL with regards to the draft, and found out some details on the Geno Smith contract. So all that is ahead. Hey, Keith.
Yeah, so fun show today. Let's start with the Geno Smith stuff, because I think that is, the most interesting to me. I know it's like, ooh, cap numbers. Everyone stay awake for a couple minutes, but
it's crazy. It's meaningful. I mean, this thing turns out to be just a really good team-friendly deal. And I'm surprised that Geno signed it before free agency hit, to be completely honest. I mean, he didn't even really go out and attempt. He must have heard through his agent that there wasn't going to be a market.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think there was going to be a huge market for him, just given his track record of 1 year and his age. And most of the teams that need a quarterback are going to be in a position to draft one. So,
in addition to that, he's just never seen this kind of money before, and it was sitting there in front of him. And you got to hand it to John Schneider as far as putting a contract together that was on the table. They laid out the parameters of where they wanted to be early in the process, and they just kind of held to that. And then Geno and his team came around, and it's really a good deal with a $10.1 million cap hit in 2023. There's some guaranteed monies there, but there's potential to get out of this even after 1 year with a little bit of dead money. After 2 years, you can pretty much walk away. He's got a tradable contract. If he continues to perform over expectations, maybe we draft a guy that needs to go right away as far as being able to start. And so Geno's, we're able to move off Geno. It's just a really good contract, both for Geno. Geno gets paid, as well as the Seahawks have a lot of options available to them, because the contract just isn't so over the top. He's only making 4.5% of the cap in 2023. Just outstanding.
Yeah, most vet starting quarterbacks are making around 13%. That's kind of the magic number. And if you look at historic in the salary cap era, that's like there's one team that's won a Super Bowl with a quarterback making more than 13%, and that would be Kansas City this last year. It took that long for it to happen. So that's kind of that magic number where agents sit, because they're like, ooh, we know we can get teams to pay at least this much. And for him to be making, less than 5 is crazy. And this is just a great deal. It's just it's a fantastic deal.
So when it was described to me and the audience, the discrepancy between what it was first reported as, kind of where it narrowed down to the $75 million figure, and then to where it actually came in as it was reported just yesterday.
Yeah. So when it was first described, it was a 3-year, $105 million. So just
and 50
crazy
something in the first year.
Yeah, and $52 million in the first year, which makes it. There was no way to structure that in a way that worked for Seattle salary cap, because they're a little cap strapped right now. There's no way that it worked with that, and you couldn't get out from underneath it. It was so bad. There's no way to structure it in a way that makes it where that third year is, that you could cut him, but man, it was just gonna hamstring you if you did. So that was such a bad deal. And then it'd be like, okay, so now it's a 3-year, $75 million deal. And you're like, okay, that's so much more realistic. 28 million in the first year, 22 in the second, 25 in the third. So it doesn't get like balloon out at the end of the contract to make the money bigger. makes him tradable. And then now to find out that so much of it was tied into, incentives and all of that. And it gets his cap number is 10.1. That's just that's an ideal number for getting your quarterback. Because it was low. We knew we needed to have his cap number to be down in that range if they were going to be able to do anything significant as far as improving this roster, other than, the draft. Like if they wanted to go get a player in the free agency, they were going to have to keep Gino's number down, and they did. So I like this. I like this deal quite a bit. There is one little thing that I think that we are kind of missing in here, and that is if Gino is on the roster on the 5th day of the league year in year 2, his salary becomes guaranteed. And that pushes the guarantees up, and that makes him at that point harder to cut. Now you might be able to cut him before that and use the June 1st designation without waiting till June 1st.
Right. But you wouldn't see the savings until after June 1st.
But you wouldn't see any savings until after June 1st.
So this year go ahead.
I was going to say, so this is still a 2-year deal, I believe. You could trade him after 1 year if you draft someone and you're like, we got to get this guy on the field. You could probably trade him after 1 year, but I don't think you could cut him because of that contract stipulation. But after 2 years, you could walk away easy.
I disagree a little bit in that I think he's uncuttable, untradeable this year. He's got a $27 million dead
Absolutely.
cap with you're underwater by 17. But in the second year, your cap number goes up from 10 to 31.2 million cap number. But your dead money is only 17.4. I know only. But your savings is 13.8. That's a point where you could walk away. Now that's be prior to the June 1st designation. So when you go to post June 1st, that changes to an $8.7 million dead cap, also 8.7 in 2025, but your overall cap savings in 2024 is 22.5 million. Overall cap savings in 2025 is 25 million. So for me, that is something that you could technically walk away from. It's not easy, but
if you can get out of
for
it with
example,
that post,
he failed to live up to expectations. You're stuck year 1, year 2, you could get out of it if you needed to.
Yeah, if he falls on his face and goes back to New York Jets, Geno Smith, then you can probably get at it. You'll take a hit and all of that, but it's not as long as you can use that post June 1 designation, you can get out of it after 1 year. But you've also got to get him off the roster before that contract becomes guaranteed. Because if it once it hits and it becomes guaranteed, those dead numbers change.
Yeah. Well, the good news is you go through the season and you make that determination next year. It's a great win for Gino. Those incentives we talked about, $30 million of that contract is incentives added on. So it's $75 million base contract plus the incentives get them up to 105. That's where that figure originally came from. And those are those incentives, I understand, are also tied to improving upon the 2022 results that he had. So all those incentives are tacked on to what he had already done. So they're unlikely to be achieved according to the league, and therefore don't have to be paid out, don't have to be looked at as being part of the cap in 2023. If he reaches those, they get tacked on at the end and fall into the 2024 camp.
Yeah, and that's a good way to structure it, because it gives him an opportunity. If he comes out and plays extremely well like he did, especially the first half of last year, then he's worth more, to be honest. And you're
the
getting
best case scenario.
Yeah, you're getting a lot out of him so that he can get paid for it. And if he does come out and he's just not as impressive or whatever, then he's not going to hit any of them. Yeah. If he gets injured, he won't hit any of them. And, you don't have to, he won't get paid. It doesn't hurt the cap on any of that. And the team moves on.
Okay, so we got the quarterback in hand. That kind of changes things a little bit around the draft. What else happened in the league this week, just a couple days ago, where Chicago traded out of the number 1 pick? Okay, so Chicago's already got their quarterback, Justin Fields. We knew that. They announced basically they weren't going to move off of that. They have invested in that. The trade brought DJ Moore with Carolina. So now they've got their number 1 wide receiver as well to give him some targets as well as some draft capital. Chicago trades back to 9. They pick up an additional 2024 first round, at 2023 second round pick, I believe, as well, and some additional assets. What did you think of that?
I like this move for Chicago. I like the move for Carolina too, because Carolina they have nothing at quarterback. There's just nothing there, and they've got to get a guy. And you look at Houston wasn't moving off 2, so then you're looking maybe Arizona at 3, but then you're getting quite possibly your third choice at quarterback. So it was worth it to give up a little bit more to move up to number 1. They get whoever they want at quarterback, whichever of the the top 4 players that they deem to be the best, the one with that's going to carry that franchise. And they gave up first round picks, so the 8 in this, or 9 in this draft. Next year's first round pick, which is probably going to be fairly high because that roster is still bad, and they're going to have a rookie quarterback, and then a second round pick this year. The Seahawks got more than that for Russell Wilson, who was significantly older and way more expensive, and you had to give a huge contract to the moment you signed. You traded for him, and DJ Moore as a tack in on there is phenomenal. I mean, he's a legit wide receiver, like a guy that can just flat out play. And so you give Fields a great weapon to go with Chase Claypool there, and so now he's got 2 legit weapons. You've now got all the extra second round pick and an extra first round pick the following year to load up on offensive line and whatever else you want to tack in there in order to make things work for the rest of that offense, and you can really build around your quarterback now. And I like it.
I like the idea too, because Chicago is probably likely to draft an offensive lineman, and there just wasn't any offensive lineman at the top of the draft, and so you get further back, and you've got your choice, either an offensive tackle, or you can go best defensive player available at that spot, and it makes more sense as far as value wise if they weren't needing Anderson or something like that. So what does that do to Seattle's strategy?
Well, I think they need to be. Everybody needs to be more open to a defensive player or a non-quarterback, because you're looking at three of the 4 teams above Seattle in the draft all are taking quarterback. You've got
currently, and Arizona could still move off that pick.
Arizona could still move off that pick, but you've got now Carolina at 1, you've got Houston at 2, and you got Indy at 4 that are all taking quarterback. So that means if you're Seattle, you don't get your choice of the top 4 quarterbacks. You get whoever's left, which is probably Richardson. If you look at it, people are super excited about his combine, but the moment they go back and rewatch his tape, they're going to realize, oh yeah, that's why he was thought of as a borderline first round pick before the combine. So
Richardson, if you chose Richardson in the top 4, that would be the biggest gamble in the draft.
Oh, it would be massive gamble, because you're taking where you should be getting a star player and you're getting a project with high upside. But if you really look at it, it's Cam Newton upside, because all that athleticism translates to being a runner. He's just doesn't have he doesn't have a lot to work with as a thrower. Now he's not like Jalen Hurts was when he came out, where he's got a really mediocre arm. Richardson's got a fantastic arm, but it's a shotgun, not a rifle, right? It's all over the place. And you're looking at teaching him how to read a defense and make decisions quickly. You're looking at teaching him how to fixing his mechanics and his footwork and the way he throws the ball and his release in order to try and get him accurate, you're looking at a massive project. He won't be playing in year one. If you're playing Anthony Richardson in year one, you've failed miserably.
And you're failing him, I think.
Yeah, him and yourself, and your fans, and that's such a disaster. So he's the ultimate project, high upside. I mean, that athleticism is
so
not
you're saying
often.
that Seattle should have its choice of either Will Anderson or Jalen Carter at the top, depending on what Jalen Carter is
With his legal
stuff, right? And if it's not that, it's Tyree Wilson, which I don't know if he's even a fit in the scheme for Seattle.
Yeah,
possibly. I mean, he might end up being like a 4-3 base defensive end player.
Will Anderson could very easily go to Arizona,
or they could take Jalen Carter possibly. I'm just saying, if Will Anderson is there, I think Seattle runs to the podium. I really do. He's a perfect fit in a 3-4 scheme for Seattle as an edge guy. You pair him up with Uchenna Nwasu, Boye Mafe, or you trade one of those players or whatever, and he comes in right away and just has a tremendous impact.
Yeah, the player I think that gets traded is Daryl Taylor.
But they're different players.
Yeah,
Daryl Taylor is 265, 70 pounds, whereas Anderson's 235.
Yeah, but they're both playing the same position. They're both playing outside linebacker in a 3-4. Anderson's just better suited for it. Daryl Taylor was drafted to play the 7-tech defensive end position in a 4-3, and then the team switched defenses.
Well, I agree to a certain extent. I think he stayed on the team though, because he's I don't know that he has a lot of trade. He might have trade value. Actually, I mean, he had 9 sacks last year. But,
9.5 sacks last year.
The player that he really replaces is Bruce Irvin on the roster. So
that would be a huge upgrade. Not trying to disparage Bruce Irvin, but he's a leader in his career, and he came in. The Seahawks needed a vet presence. They needed someone who could be steady and stabilizing force. Yeah. And Irvin definitely fit that mold and did a good job. But he's later in his career. There's a reason why he was available when he was.
He's probably reached the age where he's going to be retired, I would think, soon.
He's looking for a chance. If a team comes asking, he may wait around until the season begins like he did last year and then see if anyone's knocking on the door. And if not, he'll probably retire. All
right. So we all know the situation with Jordan Brooks with the ACL. Reports are that it's going well. He has a chance to come back for camp as well as the start of the year. It doesn't necessarily mean he's ready. I likely would think that he's probably going on IR for a while until he's comes back in the middle of the year at some point. Mm-hmm. That would mean that we've got and Cody Barton's a free agent. Don't know if we're going to re-sign Cody Barton. I think it makes sense for Seattle to re-sign Cody Barton. He's a nice person, good player, well respected,
great special teams player.
Yeah, and he's got some deficiencies, but he came along. He improved throughout the year. I think that was a good sign. And they bring him back to kind of start in the middle, at least for half a season. But I think they do turn to the draft or possibly free agency. Bobby Wagner's out there again. Teams talked. He's going to be very expensive. I don't know if Seattle goes that way unless Bobby just doesn't have a market. I do believe he has a market because he's still a decent player and brings a lot of value with leadership qualities and all that. Mm-hmm. The draft seems like a real likely place for Seattle to look to improve at the inside linebacker spot. We've got a lot of candidates in this draft. Keith, let's talk about them.
Yeah, this is one of the few positions of absolute need for Seattle, which is, they've done a decent job of, kind of filling in the roster and they need upgrades at a lot of places, but there's no just complete void at most positions except for middle linebacker. And so they've got to make this work. There's some good ones in this draft class, some really athletic ones.
I have a controversial question for you, though, right off the top.
Okay.
So everyone's got Nolan Smith pegged as an outside guy, an outside edge rusher in this draft and stuff. But if you take a look at his attributes and you really take a look at the scouting and what everyone is saying about him, I think that he could be a candidate to move inside, at least at times, or be kind of a hybrid linebacker player for you, where you send him off the edge once in a while, but he can also play sideline to sideline. diagnose in the middle, shed blocks, etc. And he's got all that athleticism and the vertical and the explosion at 6'2", 238. I know that he is where he's at, but could he transition in the NFL to be a more every down player instead of just a pass rush specialist?
Oh, you can use him anywhere. Guy's got a speed of a cornerback, with the body of an inside linebacker. He's 6'2", 240, and runs a 4.39. And the guy's just, honestly, he can be. If you draft him, you're not drafting a pass rush specialist. You're drafting a guy that you're going to use in a lot of creative ways because he's
a rangy defender. Yeah.
I would put him in the middle and then use him on the outside. I would move him all.
So he would take Cody Barton's position eventually. You put him next to Brooks, and there you go.
Yeah. Go look at Nolan Smith's numbers for combine numbers and compare them to Bobby Wagner's. And you're going to be.
So you don't think I'm crazy by adding?
I don't think you're crazy at all. No, teams are going to look at it and they're going to go, well, a pass rusher is far more valuable than an inside linebacker, and they'd be right. And that's why he's going to be viewed as an edge player. But
this guy's going to have 4 or 5 sacks a year blitzing.
Yeah, and he could have 12 coming off the edge.
Yeah. You can move him around, sure.
But I think when you've got a player that it's as dynamic as an athlete as Nolan Smith, you use him creatively. Get him all over the place. Let him play inside linebacker and use that speed and sure tackling to help shut our team's running game down. And then once you've shut the running game down, you move him over, bring him off the edge, and have him get to the quarterback. I think you can use him in both. I think you can play him in the middle on early downs. You move him over to outside to rush the passer on third down and obvious passing situations, and you get the best of both worlds.
I agree. And, I had to mention this kid. I really did. I had to work him into this show, Keith, because his favorite team in the NFL is the Seattle Seahawks, and he had a dream that he was going to play for Seattle. And he went on to a podcast, I think, Friday, and said as much. He said, they asked him, if you had your choice, which team in the NFL would you like to play for? And he didn't hesitate. He said, I want to play for the Seattle Seahawks and the 12th man.
Yeah. I mean, he's like,
come on, dude, let's go.
Yeah. Fantastic fit. And
he's going to be there at 20, probably.
He'll be there at 20. That's about the right spot for him, honestly, because he isn't the elite edge guy, a guy like Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson. He isn't,
but he ends up being a better pro, I bet,
than Will Anderson.
I think so. He's just more athletic. I mean, you look at Will Anderson's combine and all the testing numbers and stuff. This guy was like crazy off the charts good. Nolan Smith, and Will Anderson was pedestrian as far as his 40 time, his vertical, his bench reps, his broad jump, etc.
Will Anderson's also, 20 pounds heavier. He's a bigger, more physical guy, stronger guy.
Will Anderson didn't come in at 250. I think he was in at 235 or something. I don't know.
I had him at 253. So,
okay.
Maybe not.
Anyway, you're right. So, I think Nolan Smith is a good candidate to kind of move around. He's not listed as an inside linebacker in mock drafts or in a lot of boards. But when you take a look at the other candidates at the position in this draft, it's not terribly athletic or deep. And if you're really looking for a guy and you want the most impact out of a player, I think this is the candidate for me, because he does test similar to Bobby Wagner. He is similar in size to Bobby Wagner. That 4.39, Bobby Wagner, people don't remember this. Bobby Wagner had a low 4.40.
It was 4.41. So we're talking about 0.02 second difference.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, if they see it on tape, if that translates, then he could be the pick. Okay, so let's go through.
I disagree that when you say this isn't there's not a lot of athleticism. And because there's
No, I mean athleticism for Smith. Yes, absolutely off the charts.
no,
I
I
was just
mean,
talking about Anderson.
no, I was saying in this draft, like after that, I'd say
Oh, okay.
there's 6 or 7 guys that are
Okay.
really nice athletes.
You're right. I used the wrong word. Yes, athletic, but not traditionally at the middle linebacker spot, really. I mean, a lot of these guys are athletic in a way that you can move them around a lot, and they're kind of hybrid-ish kind of players.
Yeah. So I think the first player that we got to talk about when you're looking at this would be Trenton Smith out of Clemson, a guy who also is super athletic and has the speed, because he was a 4.43 40. So again, right there in
About 6'2", 235.
Yeah, at that Bobby Wagner spot in terms of his ability to run. Didn't do the agility stuff at the combine, so we're gonna have to wait for his pro day for that. But he's a guy who is, God, he's super athletic and he can go anywhere. But he is a good sure tackler. He's just quick, sideline to sideline speed, can get up and make plays. Now, I think he's a guy that is available later because he's going to be viewed as a little bit of a project as an inside linebacker. But again, if we're using the Bobby Wagner model, Wagner was a project as an inside linebacker. He was an outside linebacker, and according to the draft media, and the Seahawks drafted him to play interior, and everyone was like, "That's going to take a bit," and then he was still the day one starter, and was awesome. So, I'm not comparing anyone to Wagner. I think is a disservice to them because, I mean, Wagner's a Hall of Famer and one of the best ever put on a helmet. But just saying, like
I think it's better served if you compare him to like a Jordan Brooks, because it's the current player on our roster.
Brooks is probably and I would say that you look at Trenton Simpson and he's a guy that compares really well to a Jordan Brooks. Like he's a very similar player.
I think the really important factor that we don't have access to is how they interview, how they diagnose plays, how they are leaders, because that position requires a guy that's able to vocalize and to just command the defense a little bit, and so you want to make sure that you've got that in a player. How about Drew Sanders from Arkansas, Keith?
See here, this is when I was looking, I'm like, okay, who of the guys that are listed as a middle linebacker? So taking the other, the outside linebacker, whatever, like a true inside middle linebacker guy. This is kind of the guy that I looked at and go, yeah, we'll take that, because 6'4", 235 is a little light, but he could easily put on another 10 pounds, but super athletic in what he does. Just a guy that can flat play, really physical traits, gets upfield and makes tackles at the line of scrimmage, fights through traffic really well.
Get off the edge too if you want to send them around.
If you need to, or blitzing, he's great. I just think that it's a guy that he looks like a long-term solution at middle linebacker. Is athletic.
I agree. Super athletic and fluid. And those things come out when you look at him. He's just rangy. He can, he dodges blockers. And he's just has the ability to anticipate and get to a spot, and all the things you want out of a linebacker. And he would be a great pick, especially at the top of the second round if Seattle chose to go that way. Who else, Keith, at the top do you want to talk about?
How about Jack Campbell out of Iowa?
One of my favorite prospects in the draft, actually.
Yeah. Jack Campbell, he's
old school dude.
He is kind of an old school like thumper. He's 6'5", 250. So he's bigger. But slow. that length at 6'5", gives him something to work with. The 4.65, but you look at his splits good, his
Yeah.
agility numbers are great.
Yeah.
He's super athletic, even though he doesn't have the straight line speed. You know who he kind of profiles as with that
Like
speed
Mike
and length?
Singletary. I don't know who.
No. The guy who played weak side linebacker for Seattle next to Bobby Wagner for 10 years.
KJ, huh?
4.65 speed and long length.
Was KJ right? 250?
He was like
At
255.
6'4"? Was he really? I thought he was 230.
He's a bigger guy, long length, not a lot of speed, but man, was he long, which made him great in coverage. And what made KJ awesome was he was just super smart and instinctive, and he got literally there was no one in the league better at sniffing out a screen than KJ Wright. And
that's true.
So that's part of it. And we don't know if a guy like Jack Campbell's going to be able to do that and have that kind of recognition, but he does so many things well.
People would love this pick. If Seattle made this pick, he would immediately make fans fall in love with him just because he's so protocol middle linebacker guy. Like, you look at him, you're just going, that guy's a linebacker, and that's what he is. And he's super violent with his hands, a sure tackler. You just know when you get hit by this guy that you've just been hit. So he adds that X factor to the defense that I think that we're missing. I like Jordan Brooks as a player and stuff, but you look at him and you really look at all the times that he tackles and stuff. He's not violent. Like, he doesn't really just completely annihilate a player. He wraps up nice and everything. He's sure tackler and so forth, but this guy's kind of a difference maker. And I would be excited to add that element to the defense. I think we're missing that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think that I think this would be a fun pick because he is a guy that he just looks like a middle linebacker, in so many different ways. Like, he just got that. You said it, old school. He's got that old school middle linebacker. I'm going to come up and smack you. Look, and I think that's just fun.
So one of the players that you had mocked the other day to Seattle, Henry 2020 out of Alabama, is an interesting player to me. It's hard to peg where he's going to go in this draft. Some teams, I think, are going to feel like he's not physical enough. We just talked about one of the most physical players in this draft, in Jack Campbell. And then you go to Henry 2020, and while he's listed as a middle linebacker, it looks like to me he plays more like a weak side guy, or somebody that's just not going to hit you, but more of a finesse player.
Yeah. So he has that 4.6 speed that we just talked about in Jack Campbell, but is 6'1", 227. Yeah. He doesn't have that size. I expected him to run faster than this.
I did too.
And his like broad jump is under 10 feet. He did not show the athleticism that I expected. I mean, he's a good, sure tackler, but yeah, he doesn't have that explosiveness to him. Technically, very good.
And a leadership quality.
Absolutely. Known as a vocal leader. Guys look to him.
At Alabama, I mean, that's a big program, and he's a big time leader for that team.
Yeah, and you've got technically he's really good. Athletically, he's not that special.
He benefited from having really good players around him too.
He had really good players in front of him, most notably, which meant that he didn't have blockers climb and try and block him.
Yeah.
They couldn't get to him because they were too busy trying to stop the defensive linemen from destroying plays. And so that helps. That does make a linebacker look better on tape.
All right. So how about DeHalen Henley out of Washington State?
So I like Henley. I think that he's a guy that is going to have a fun career at the next level, but he's undersized. He's 225 pounds.
So do you think you move him outside in the NFL?
In the NFL, he would be a great weak side linebacker.
I agree. There's a scheme fit for him, and I don't know that Seattle's it.
4'5", 440. So he's got the speed, got the explosiveness, got the athleticism, but he's undersized. He does play really fast and does a good job of getting downhill. Not a guy that just crushes people as a tackler. But you're not going to be at 225 pounds.
Well, the good news for him is he does have that height. He is kind of a thick, muscular build with longer arms, good athleticism. He might be able to overcome some of those things. And good in coverage, so you can drop him back.
That's the part that I like about him. He is, he's Cody Barton 2.0.
Yeah.
Undersized, good, good in coverage, undersized, may not be the greatest tackler just because he doesn't hit with a lot of power due to his lack of size, and but is super rangy, can get sideline to sideline. So I think he's definitely going to have a decent NFL career. I don't know if pairing him with Cody Barton at the start of the year is a smart choice. He's more of a let's replace Cody Barton with a younger, possibly better player.
Interesting. Who else do you want to talk about? There any middle round guys that possibly could be?
I think we should talk about Noah Sewell out of Oregon.
Yeah.
It's another guy that I like to mock to Seattle. Just because I know, he looks like a little linebacker too. Super sure tackler. Is one of those guys that just seems to be in on every play. 6'1", 246. He's got that size. But 4'6", 40 was really slow. I was expecting him to be, 4'5", maybe 4'8". I was not expecting, 4'6", and I really wasn't expecting a broad jump under 10 feet. He had a really disappointing combine. But he's a guy that is physical.
He going to last into the third round, Keith?
I don't know. He might.
To me, he's the second or third best true quote unquote middle linebacker in this draft. Whether it's a 4.3 or a 3.4, I think this is a guy that has enough athleticism and tenacity to play in either scheme. I think he's scheme diverse. I think he's a good zone defender as far as dropping back in coverage with tight ends and following running backs out of the backfield. And I think he's powerful, and I think and you take a look at Bruce Feldman had him on his freak list number 42 because he can bench 425 pounds. He's cleans 665 pounds.
But other than the bench press, show me an impressive number on his combine. There isn't one.
Well, 4.640. Yeah, you could probably say that if he ran on the 4.5s, he'd probably he might go a little sooner. But
4.64. I just maybe he'll come out
at his guy more than agility.
He'll come out at his pro day and run better, and those numbers tick up, and you're like, okay, well that explains the tape a little bit better. He just had a bad day, but
if there was another player like Jack Campbell in this draft, it would be Noah Sewell. Basically, he's not quite as long, but he's pretty good. And I
good.
think that
I really like
the third round.
He's a guy that I like to mock to Seattle because I think he fits what they need as an interior lineman. I don't know if he's rangy enough to cover the elite speed running backs out of the backfield, the ones that are known as pass catchers, the Alvin Kamara's and that kind of stuff. I think he is gonna struggle, and guys are just gonna run away from him. But you would need a guy that to step up and try and tackle Derrick Henry in the hole. Well, this is your guy. And so there's a lot to like there. I think it's just a matter of you got to take him, look at what he does well, look at what he doesn't necessarily do as well, and design
Yeah.
his responsibilities around those things. And a good coaching staff will do that.
I think you're exactly right. And in the 3-4, I think you're afforded to be able to do that,
Because you have
as
two guys
opposed
in the
to a
middle.
4-3. Yeah.
Yep.
Guys like Owen Papo and Marvin Overshone. I don't know that they're perfect fits in Seattle's scheme, although they bring the super athletic traits, especially the speed. Papo is from Auburn, is 4'3", 940. Overshone's similar, long, 6'3". Owen Papo's only 6 foot, 225, undersized.
Yeah.
So I just don't know. It'd be nice to have those players on the team, but I don't know exactly what you would do with them.
Yeah. I mean, Papo would
And there's
be
a lot of guys like this in the draft.
a weak side linebacker in a 3-4, or sorry, a 4-3. That you could bring him in, plug him there, and forget about it. But in a 3-4, you need guys that are a little bigger that can fight through blocks because you don't have as much protection. And I just don't see him doing well in that.
Yeah. Is there anybody in the later rounds that you want to talk to about that we can kind of finish this conversation off with?
I think we should. There's two. We haven't need to talk about Nick Herberg out of Wisconsin, and as a guy that can just. There's a lot there. He just does a lot of he does a lot of things really well, but nothing spectacularly, if that makes sense. He's good in coverage, 6'2", 240. Again, that 4.65 40, so not like the speed guy, but comes up field, makes tackles, is a good wrap up, guy. Isn't a guy that like tries to hit people down and then has bounces off. He's a very sure tackler. I think that he's a guy that has a chance to be like a 5th round pick that could actually come in and contribute, and maybe be a guy that you could count on in the middle of a 3-4.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one. And then the other one would be a really undersized guy, in Ivan Pace Jr. out of Cincinnati. He's 5'10", which you're like, ooh, that's no, that's pretty small. But 231 pounds, so he's a little undersized. But honestly, the guy has just rangy speed and can really move, and just seems to have a knack for being in the right place and making tackles and just, I don't know. He's just a guy. I look at him and I get why people would be like, I don't know, like why are you drafting up this player? But he just is always in the right place.
Yeah, interesting.
And so
I think the one last guy that I would mention that would be available in the 5th, 6th round, and Seattle would possibly be interested because he played at the Senior Bowl, and if Jim Nagy likes him, all that kind of stuff, they seem to like players like that. And in the later rounds is Isaiah Land, the linebacker out of Florida A&M, 6'3", 236 pound, around a 4'6", 240, super athletic and long and rangy, and he just needs to be coached up. All that kind of stuff. Probably his weakest attribute would be in coverage. But you gotta, at that point in the draft, you're looking for athletic upside, guys that can play special teams right away, come in and be part of your unit. I know, Seattle's got 10 draft picks in this draft. We're going to be looking to add some depth, to add some players that are going to fill out the roster. And this would be kind of one of those guys.
Yeah.
And we don't have a lot to work with at linebacker. I mean, we talked about it all last season. I think Seattle comes away in this draft with, a combination of, I think 2 or 3 players in the middle of the defense. So whether that's at middle linebacker or outside linebacker, and then a safety, I think we kind of improved upon those areas in this draft.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a team. I mean, the defense was just genuinely bad last year. You know, they're going to get help at defensive tackle. They're going to get on the defensive line guys that can eat blocks and, get upfield and all that kind of stuff. And they're going to get. They absolutely have to improve at middle linebacker because right now you've got one guy who's an NFL starter on the roster and he's hurt and probably won't start the season active. So there's that, and I actually think you're going to see them. Look at safety too, which is our next show. Consequently, because Jamal Adams,
not a very good class, by the way.
Jamal Adams is almost certainly gone with the post June 1st designation, and that puts him in a position where you got your two starters, but there's not depth there, so they need to replace guys. And honestly, you need to start looking at replacing Diggs because that $18 million salary is bloated and unwieldy. And there's that.
Yeah, I agree. But I think they're going to end up running that back. I have this feeling. I don't know why.
No, I agree. I think they are going to run it back this year, but I think you can't look at that going forward and think that that's going to be the best case scenario. You know what I mean? Like you need to either get him an extension where his number is down at 12, or you need to start looking at developing his replacement.
So, final question for you: who do you like out of this draft class for the Seahawks, and where do they find this player in the draft? We talked about the premium at the very top, and a couple of really good mid-tier guys.
Of course, you say that right after I close my notes.
Sorry,
I thought we were done. No, I like Jack Campbell, and I think you get him in round 2. And probably maybe even with the second round 2 pick, so the Seahawks 4th pick overall. I don't know if he's going to go higher than that because of the lack of speed. He's just kind of that old school guy, but man, to have that thumper in the middle that comes up and just lays the wood on people and knocks them back and just does those things at middle linebacker that you don't see very often in today's NFL would be fun. I think it's a good fit.
I like that. I really like the Nolan Smith idea only because at 20 or drop back a couple picks and pick up additional value and draft Nolan Smith because of the diversity. He can play middle linebacker for you. You can put him on the outside. He can get
I love speed on defense.
Yeah, his speed and
you can never have enough defensive speed. And honestly, if you draft him with the idea that you're going to move him all over the place, but that he's going to be your middle linebacker in your base defense, I'll go for it. Do it.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay. So let's get out of here. Thanks for the conversation. Good conversation. We spent 15 minutes at the top talking about Geno Smith and some other things, but finally got this thing rolling. I don't think it's a great deep linebacker class, and we're going to talk about safeties. I think the same thing applies there. But you can find guys. You just got to find them in the right spot at the draft. So we'll see what the strategy is when this thing gets rolling. Find Keith at Myers NFL on Twitter. You can find me at NW Seahawk. You know where the show's at. When you find it, hit the subscribe button. That really helps us out. And we'll see you next time. So go Hawks.
Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.